I'm like, ooh, I can't wait. I want to work with you. You are just, I'm like, wait, hold on, personally. Hello, hello, and welcome to the Weeder Life podcast. I'm your host, Erica Weederlight, and I am the CEO and founder of We the Light. I help humans who feel inadequate, broken, self-conscious, and shamed around their sexuality to reclaim their aliveness, their power, and to have a renewed relationship to pleasure while preparing themselves to feel hella confident to date others and themselves. AKA, I'm guiding people to live their #best lives. I have to give you a fair warning. I do unfortunately swear like a drunken sailor, so if you do have little ones by you, just be sure to pop in some earbuds. All right, friends, let's buckle up and let's rock it to this week's episode. I am really super psyched with our next guest today. I think you could see in my vibe, like usually I'm like, ah! Like all over the place, but I feel in her presence just a sense of calmness. And for me, it's a reminder to like, Erica, lovingly, get back to center, come back. She is a gorgeous space holder and an amazing human. And it's a privilege really to have her on the podcast today because there's so much we can talk about alignment and consciousness and confidence and soul contracts and soul stuff. So let me get to introducing our next fabulous guest. Danieylah Veola, this fabulous woman, she helps humans seek and upgrade. It's really, when I think of her work, it's like thriving work. She upgrades their lives experiences. They move into empowerment. They embrace true, lasting healing. And this is what I love, transformation. And she does so much gorgeous work. She's a master energy healer, an intuitive, a crystal Reiki master, certified angelic healing practitioner, and she is accredited by the International Association of Therapists. I could talk 45 minutes more about her bio, but let's just get to it. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce my friend and my next fabulous guest. Hello, welcome. We're so happy that you're here today.
Erica, thank you so much for that beautiful, warm, glowing introduction. Truly a blessing to be sharing this space with you.
Thank you. Same. We're going to get into it, but wow, what a beautiful body of work that you, I don't want to say produce, but and what I really was getting to is what you live. Because I'm always the times that we've hopped on the Zoom and even us engaging outside of conversation, it really is obvious that like you live your work's mission. It doesn't feel disjointed. It's not like I'm doing this healing work and then it's like you really live your truth. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch someone really live their mission. Like that is it's just like, it's so nice.
Yes, the core really is you are source. You truly are source.
Yeah.
And I mean that in two different ways, right? So you are the source of everything in your life, right? You're the source of all of the creations of your life. But you're also source as in God, the infinite creator, the universal intelligence. And just like what you said, like living it, is that we're all living it. We are all living fractals in physical form of source itself. So source is you are source. Source is having its experience through you. And the beautiful thing is that once you really embrace that inner knowing and you live that, your life takes on a whole different light.
Yeah. Yes. I know this is like such a big question, but can we get into that? Because so much of your work and what you practice which is so empowering and also for someone might be so overwhelming, but that you have all of the answers, knowledge, power within you. So can you talk to us about, maybe we could start with like your journey about how you got to this and how you teach others to tap into their infinite power, their infinite love, their infinite healing, that it's not so much outside of themselves, but it really is within.
Yeah. So beautiful. So I'm just going to start off by saying that my childhood was quite difficult and painful, as it was for, I mean, most of us, right? Some people are blessed, have like, easy peasy, or at least easier. No one has it totally easy, right? Because you could have trauma just tripping on your own feet at 4 years old. So, but for me, it was quite challenging, and there was a lot of abuse and things of that nature in my home. And what happened was, as we all do in those very early years, is we become imprinted with the conditioning and the programming, the imprinting of our families, of our societies and cultures, and how we're raised. And I took that childhood trauma and I held it in me, not even realizing that it was really there, right? I thought that was like a been there, done that, move on with my life kind of a thing. And what wound up happening was I wound up, as we all do, carrying forward those traumas in the more current people, my relationships, spouse, friends, coworkers, things of that nature. And I really grappled with a lot of insecurity, a lot of wounding, a lot of unworthiness, dealing with abandonment issues that showed up in all sorts of different beliefs that I had around myself, like things are going to be difficult, it's not going to be easy. I had to struggle. I had to work hard for money, all of those kinds of programs, right? I'm not enough. I'm not enough to be listened to, right? So many of these programs going on. And what I kept doing, like as we do, is I kept looking for the answers outside myself. I kept thinking, if I do something different like this, then I'm going to see a different outcome like that, right? If, that person was a horrible person, to me, so that's it. I'm not going to accept somebody who doesn't care for me or is abusive mentally to me or emotionally to me, and I'm going to find somebody different. And what happened was, it's like that frequency of that trauma and wounding just kept showing up over and over again, just in different faces and different places. And it got to a point where I hit the lowest of the low. I was not divorced, but separated from my husband at the time. I had a young son, so I was a single mom. I was working like 3 jobs just to try to get by. I was addicted to Adderall because I needed it to function. Like I just couldn't get myself up and out unless I had it. And I was self-medicating as well on the weekends. And what wound up happening was I just hit that lowest point, and I was like, I can't live like this anymore.
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore. I kept thinking like something would change, and nothing was changing. And I kept looking outside myself. And finally I turned inward because I got that desperate. I just was like, you know what? I'm tired of draining myself trying to fix this or fix that or fix this person or fix that situation. And I started going inward. And what I did was I went back to my very early childhood. So I had heard someone at some point in the journey say, especially as women, right? Because we give ourselves away. So like and then we're so depleted. And I started, I forget who it was. Somebody said something and it really resonated with me. Do something for yourself. Do something like to nurture you. So I started taking baths. And with those baths, I started using candles. And then and then that opened me up to like, I always loved crystals. So just to back up for a second, when I was born, when we're born, usually the veil drops, right? This veil drops and our minds are wiped, right? So that we could be more present in the current avatar that we're living as. And what happened was for me is the veil didn't drop. So from very, very early on, as long as I could remember going back as an infant, I would just pop myself out of the body. I would just literally have out of body experiences and astral project at will. It made me a really awesome baby. My mother always said, like, you were the most like easiest baby ever. Like, she could put me in a baby swing and all day long I would be happy because I would just pop myself out of my body. And what wound up happening was by the time I was 11 years old, I was studying all sorts of divination. And at this time, I think it was Walden Books was around it. And I'm really dating myself here.
I love it.
And it was like, well, and I would go to, first I went to the library, and then I went to the bookstore. And by the time, long story short is by the time I was 18 years old, I had my own consulting practice using all these various divination. So like, I remember being in, it wasn't middle school at that time, it was junior high school. I remember being in home ec class and kids lining up to show me their palms because I would read people's palms, and I would do like astrology, and I would do people's natal charts, and I would do numerology. Anybody who would give me their name, their birth name or like their date of birth. I would break it all down. I loved all of these kinds of things. And I studied dream analysis and I studied all these things. So by the time I was 18, I had my own practice. And so what happened was, now I'm going to go back to the more current, where I was at my lowest of my low, is I said, I always loved crystals. Like, let me start utilizing crystals. So I started like collecting all different crystals. And at that time, my husband called me. He was like, you and your rocks. I would just have like these big boulders of like rose quartz or, obsidian. And what wound up happening was I just started collecting these crystals. And it had been quite a long time because I stopped having my own private practice at about 21 years old, because that's when I felt like I needed to go out in the world and make something of myself. I had all this programming, make money, get married, have the house, do the whole thing. And so I put my spiritual practice to the side and I just took off into the world, college. I went all the way through a master's degree. I went through like 5 different careers, everything from being an actress, a SAG actress, to working off Wall Street. And what wound up happening was, when I went to those crystals, it's like I found myself again. I found like a way into me as reflected through these crystals. So I found myself one night, I'm still in the lowest of the low. And I was smoking cigarettes at that time. And I used to say that I was saging myself. Like I would, I'm smoking myself out, And I'm out there on this deck at night and I'm with these crystals. And I didn't even know what crystals grids were, or even that they were a thing. And I just started placing these crystals out on this big, long glass table. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was intuitively putting a grid together. And I had no idea that I was even doing that. But I looked up at the stars and I looked up and I said, I am ready. I'm ready for my next step. I'm ready for my next evolution. I'm ready to ascend. I didn't even know ascend was a spiritual word. I just used it quite literally, to rise. I am ready. I'm done with this. I'm done with where I'm at. I'm tired. I'm ready. Like, let's just do it already. Yes. I literally just surrendered in that moment. It was such a heartfelt, intuitive, soulful plea. And they listened. Oh man, did they listen?
Oh yes. They're like, man, here we go.
Listen. They were like, she's ready. Let's do this. That's quite literally, because like I would say within a month, maybe, I'm not really sure, maybe max 2, I was at a bagel store. I'm walking out of so I had my cell phone with YouTube on speaker, listening to this woman talking about crystals, and I had it in my handbag, right? So I have this just blaring out her voice talking. And I'm at this bagel store. I'm walking out of the bagel store with this little brown bagel bag, and I walk out of the store, and the voice all of a sudden stopped talking on YouTube, and all of a sudden this other voice started talking, completely different. Other voice out of nowhere, like as if it had been talking all this time. And it said, it's okay. Put your feet up. Do nothing. We give you permission. And the second I heard that, it's like my whole reality twisted, turned, and this huge download. It was like this huge download of universal data flooded into me. And what it was like, all right, so you know how like you're living your life and you feel like, all right, this is the container of my life. Like this is my capacity, my container here. And this is, I live my life in this. It was like the container opened hugely.
Wow.
Tremendously. It was like my container, my capacity, who I am, what I am, on a very core, energetic soul level, just blew out. And this huge amount of data just flooded into my body. And I was in shock.
Yeah.
I was dazed.
Yeah.
And I just kind of like, I wasn't really in my body. I made it to my car. I got in the car and I sat in the car with the bag still in my hand, just like in shock. And when I finally came to and I realized, what am I doing? What am I doing here? Okay, let me put the bag down. All right, let me start the car. And I backed up the car and I drove the 40 feet to the red light waiting to make the turn on the road. And as I sat there and I glared into that red light, I realized in that moment, all of a sudden, like this huge smile came over my face. And I said, oh my God, I have been waiting for this moment my entire life. My entire life, everything I've been, everything I've gone through, everything that's happened to me was to prepare me for this moment right here. This moment of consciousness, this moment of realization of the truth of who I am, what's really happening in the universe, why I'm here, where we're headed, and I have a part in this.
Yes.
I wasn't clear about what the part was, but I just had that very raw knowing. It was like my whole mind, consciousness just expanded so huge. And it was like, and I'm driving down the road and I'm looking around at all the stores and everything I've driven down so many times before, and they look totally different to me. They were the same, but they were totally different. And I got home and I walked up my carpeted steps and I got to the middle of my living room and I stood there and I stared at the carpet and I could see all the fine little fibers in the carpet and everything went so hyper focused for me. And I stood in the middle of that living room for at least a half hour, just stood there and just absorbed that I was here. I made it. I'm here. And what I came to realize later on is that was what's called a reincarnation in the same body. That was my experience of a reincarnation in the same body, which is similar to a walk-in experience. And their walk-ins are very, very common. You know, you get to a point where you have a soul agreement and you agree to vacate for a higher frequency to come in to the body, right? Wow. So for me in the reincarnation, what it was I completed like a certain level of what it is I came here for. I completed that. And I had a choice point to either vacate or to come in with new contracts, upgraded contracts. And so in that split moment, as I walked out the door, the trigger for me was that voice, who I came to know later on was Barbara Marciniak, who channels the Palladians. I had never knew of her before that moment. That was her voice that came on, triggered my reincarnation in the same body, which I called from that night that I was out there with the crystals, you know, my next level without knowing it. That was my next level. I was like, all right, the choice point was there. You can leave or you can go back with upgraded contracts. And that's what I came back with. And that's why my container, my capacity for energy expanded hugely, because a whole level of my soul group came in with me.
Wow.
Yeah. And that took about 8 months for me to integrate that experience in that 1 second. I used to walk around saying, what am I going to do with all this?
Right.
I mean, it really was like, I couldn't keep like myself settled.
Yeah.
There was this internal like instability because I hadn't yet completely fit into that container.
Right.
Like, you know, imagine your house, you always live in a house, it's a quaint cottage, and then all of a sudden you move to a mansion. You're like, what do I do with all this space? Why is that even there? Or, you know, you got to figure out how you fit into the space.
Yeah.
That's quite literally how I felt for 8 straight months, was like, what do I do with this? And so very shortly after that, I started teaching. I started putting myself out there and teaching. Yeah.
Wow. I have so many questions. I'm obsessed. Let me ask you this though, just because for me, this is so top of mind, because I'm laughing, but I'm not, because of course, this happens. No coincidences. But this morning I was talking with a client about energetics and taking up space. And we were talking how this person feels like a home, like they've done the contract in a way, like they know how to take up this much space, and now this person's moving into holding more space for holding better things and more alignment. So there's so many places I want to go, but first and foremost, like, can you talk to us about, I want to ask so many things, but I guess I'll ask this. How did you integrate? What helped you integrate? What helped you land? And can you talk about, because it's very clear, like, you are so in tune, like, how do you keep high, not the right word, but go with me, like high energetic hygiene. Cause it's clear like you are discerning, you're conscious about like your energetics, your consciousness, like it's clear that you are clean and clear and under control. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like I could tell like how, so can you talk to us about your personal journey with that? And like, maybe if someone's listening and they're new to this work, like how can they start to fine tune their energetics, being in their body? Like, can you give us how it worked for you and maybe some suggestions for someone that's like, ooh, I'm interested in this?
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot there. So, first of all, when I was going through that process of integrating, one of the things that I learned that's so important is to relax.
Yes.
So relax. It's okay. You don't need to know everything right now. You don't need to like everything will divulge itself and unfold beautifully if you just trust and allow and just nurture yourself, right? Be always kind and loving and gentle with yourself. That's first and foremost with anything, whether you're integrating something new or you're taking on a new project or you had a shift, right? We're all shifting constantly. Sometimes they're a lot more profound, the experience for us than others. The important thing is to be gentle and kind with yourself, be loving to yourself, treat it like an infant, and nurture it and listen to it and tune in, right? You are source. You have everything right inside of you. Tune inward, right? Yes, there's a time and place to tune outwards for things, but be discerning about that and be discerning about what you're tuning into in that. But most importantly, be with you, love you, care for you, listen to you, nurture you, because that's where it all comes from. You are source. So be with you first and foremost. That's a big part of any kind of integration process. As far as the energetic hygiene, it comes down to discernment. And again, in the combination with tuning into you, what feels good to you? What lifts you up? What upsets you? What brings you out of center? What is my center? How do I find my center? Again, tuning into you and playing with these things, just the way you would, play a video game or, go out somewhere with your friends. Invest time in just being with you. The way you take a shower and brush your teeth, it's the same thing, energetic hygiene. It's etheric. It's not tangible in the physical. So you gotta spend time in your imagination as well as tuning into your body, tuning into like when you eat something, did that, afterwards, maybe initially it was enjoyable, but maybe 20 minutes later, your tummy's telling you, I don't really like that. But we push through those things because they're not physical and tangible and outside of ourselves. We have a tendency to prioritize what's outside. It's time to start prioritizing what is inside. So if say you're at work and you eat your lunch and you go back to your computer and you realize like your tummy's not quite where you want it to be, you know what, if you have to go into the bathroom and just sit and hold your stomach with your hands and tell your stomach it's okay. You promise I won't eat that anymore. You're here, you understand, right? Like that kind of practice, right, will shift everything because your consciousness is your currency, just the way your frequency is your currency. You need to be attuned to what uniquely for you is optimal and what works for you.
Oh, that is so... that's so helpful, loving, and that's like a huge part, obviously, of both of our work is there's such a glamorization in what's going on outside of ourselves. And someone like me that for a long time suffered with anxiety, I would go on the train of what was outside of myself. And it's funny, the work that you're talking about is what helped a lot of my anxiety of coming back in, coming back in, coming back in, coming back in. And so I can't thank you for that permission of like going back in, taking care of yourself. Like it sounds simple, but it takes a little bit of work, and that's okay. And that's really beautiful. And I also want to jump, and we'll jump back to this, but like, thank you for the permission. And I talk about this a lot of like rest and self-care because you know the deal. I talk about this a lot on this podcast. Like we are a hustle, grind, what can you do? What can you achieve society? And so a lot of this work is really permission giving. And also I'm sure people are a little like, ugh, like resistant, of course, and scared about part of this conversation that like, what does it mean if, you know, and I talk about that a lot with my clients. I'm sure you do too. Like, what does it mean to slow down? And a lot of fear comes up like, that means I'm lazy or I'm not producing enough or, you know, so thank you for giving it permission in a way that feels safe, that rest is needed, self-care, like deep. I'm not saying, and I always say this, like not like face mask self-care. We love that. We love that. But what you're talking about is like soul level integration, self-care, alignment.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've been conditioned, you know, for many, 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 many generations, if not thousands of years, that our value is equal to what we produce. And if we're not producing, then we're not worth anything. And that's a very intrinsic, it's like in our DNA, right? I think it takes 7 generations to shift the DNA, right? Which is the form holding template for your complete construction here in the physical realm is found within the DNA. So it's super important to keep that top of mind and within your heart that you are not what you produce, and that what we bring to the world in terms of our energy is the true value, right? If you, you know, don't get me wrong, if you're a super achiever and you love being a super achiever and you could keep yourself in a place of balance and alignment, and that keeps you going and sustains you and stuff, then perfect, you know, but not everybody functions like that. And quite frankly, most of us, you know, don't function on that level. We're all so exceptionally unique. So it's super, super important to prioritize your health and well-being energetically, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, if you will, and make that the priority. And in doing that, making that the priority, the things that you will create and bring into the world will be far more valuable than any physical thing that you could actually bring forth.
Oh, that is such a mic drop. Because you hit that is such a mic drop, because I think a lot of people might hear like light worker and be like, yeah, anyway, but I'm a this and a that. Like that's this and that is my occupation, my profession. But I think I love what you said with our frequency, our vibration, our love, our light. Like that is our blueprint in a way. That's what we're giving back to this world. Like, yes, we might be giving back other things, but that is so beautiful and I think that's so permission giving, not from a place of perfection to ourselves, but like a goal to attain of like, I'm really going to focus on my thriving and my alignment, but I'm also really going to focus on how I show up and how I'm energetically showing up and my frequency, because we obviously, you and I know the deal. Like when we do that for ourselves, like that is absolutely healing for ourselves, for others. That is so potent. And so thank you for highlighting that, because that so gets lost. Like you said, it's not seen or heard. It is, but you know, quote unquote. And so thank you for that permission. That is such a big permission slip for us to focus back on that, because we so lose sight of that in the society.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, I'm so excited with where we're headed as a society. And I know that, you know, many people, they're like, oh, you know, the world is ending, or, you know, oh, you know, are you kidding me? Like, look what's happening out there. It's like super scary. My perspective and my take and my feel on it, and it has been since 2016. It was in 2016 when I received that download, that I received the intel that took me years, and I'm still unpacking from that, about what's happening, you know, from a galactic perspective, and what's happening, you know, within, you know, this galaxy and solar system and on the planet. And we're in a place of breakdown to breakthrough. So, and that's what we're witnessing out there. We're witnessing everything breaking down. And that's the key to thriving through this, is witnessing.
Yes.
Not participating, not mud throwing, right? Not not getting into quantum entanglement with all the projections that are going on, but rather to just take a deep breath and stand back and say, okay, I'm here to witness this. What can I do? What can I bring to the table that's going to support where I want this to go? Right? And focusing our energy on what we are creating rather than focusing on what is dismantling. What am I creating? Because that's all we can do is bring our part of the puzzle forward in service to the world, into our families or communities or to ourselves, right? That's all we can do is say, this is what I have to offer. And my energy, I vote with my energy for peace. I vote for my energy for courage. I vote with my energy for discernment, integrity, abundance, whatever it is, because your vote with your energy and frequency is what you are focusing on. What you choose to put your energy and attention into is your vote for what you want in the world. So if you are putting your energy and attention and focus on the things that are dismantling, you're voting for those things. By, it's a core foundational understanding in metaphysics or in spirituality, if you will, that where your attention goes, grows, right? Where the attention goes, the energy flows, and where the energy flows, it expands it. So that's one thing I teach, and that's one thing I live is I have people, I say to like my clients or students or whoever, focus on what it is you're creating. Focus on what it is that you want in the world. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying not to be aware of what's happening, but don't get yourself emotionally tied into it and don't get consumed by it.
Yes.
Right? You tap in, you get what you want, you tap out so you can be in the know. There's a fine line between being in the know and indulging in the distortion of it.
Absolute that, and I'm again as a space holder for both of us, that has been a huge in the last few months, in the last few years, has been a huge thing I personally have been holding people through. What is that like discernment, fine line of, like you said, go in, get the information you need to make aligned decisions and actions. And then when are we like reveling in it too much? When are we sitting in it too much? Because I'm seeing amazing humans getting so burnt out, so overwhelmed. And I really want to again highlight what you're saying, because it's really permission giving, because we're taught so often through familial conditioning, society, the whole thing, that it's selfish for us to focus. There's like a part of us, and for some people, for some narrative, like or at least what I'm hearing with my clients, is that they feel bad if they're not burnt out by the news. If that makes sense. It's not like go in there, get it, do what you have to do, and whatever, if that looks like, whatever that looks like for you, activism, whatever form, and also energetic. But there's some guilt I'm seeing time and time again. They're like, I feel like I have to be burnt out by it or I'm not a good person. And so I love what you're suggesting. Go in, do what you got to do. And then also, not only is your action helping, but your vibration is helping. And so often this conversation isn't talked about because it's looked at as that's selfish, that's wrong, that's ignorant, that's turning the other cheek. But I think what you're suggesting is so beautiful. So thank you for highlighting that this can exist, because I'm seeing a lot of people feel fearful and wrong and bad if they don't get totally demolished and burnt out by it.
Yeah. We're bridging into a whole new paradigm. We're going into the age of Aquarius from the age of Pisces. The age of Pisces was an age of devotion, right? It's all about devotion. And it was about like devoting to something or someone or some idea. And now we're in the age of Aquarius. And this age of Aquarius is all about, the age of community, the age of inner growth, the age of awakening. Right. So it's no longer an age of devotion, but rather it's an age of coming inside yourself and allowing yourself to reveal your truth and share that. Like that, the core of why we're all here is really to serve as reflector and mirror points to each other and to come together in unity in that knowing and understanding, right? That we're all together. We all come from the same place. We're all going to the same place. And it's that age of Aquarius energy is all about community. It's
Mm.
all about like horizontal community, not top down, vertical. This person tells you what to do and so on and so forth. But we're going into that place. And that transition, it's a huge transition point, right? I mean, like tremendous. I mean, we have lived thousands of lives for this opportunity to be here in this now moment, to be witnessing what's happening in the world and to remember that, right? To remember that all of that stuff out there, it'll all move through. It doesn't, I'm not saying it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is don't hold on to any of it, because that's the stuff that's going out the door.
Yeah.
Right. So just allow it to be and hold that higher wisdom and that really inner standing that what is happening in the world is we're in a huge transition point. And what happens when you're in a transition point? If you think about it, like you start here at this level, right? Point A, and we're going to point B. And point B seems to be like on this high trajectory over here. We're in between those 2 points. And what happens when you're in between those 2 points? There's really no grounding, right? Because you haven't landed yet. And that feels uncomfortable. And there's that fear of the unknown and the fear of the what ifs. And so that's where the most important thing is to stay as centered and present and grounded in yourself, so that you are your own anchor point. You're your own landing pad as this transition goes on. And if the world out there still looks crazy and hectic, then guess what? We haven't gotten to our point B yet, and that's okay. Keep yourself grounded and centered. And there's so many different ways to be grounded and centered. Like Eckhart Tolle, he speaks of presence, and presence is wonderful. Another word is the mindfulness. But one thing that I like to teach is the practice of hara. And the practice of hara is the awareness of really like your power column. It's this line of light that connects you to source, the source of all creation, right? It goes through the body, through the crown, through the spine, out through the base, through the perineum, and right down into the core of the earth, right? Because we are the conduit. We are the conduit. We are the receiver of source that's then sharing that source energy with this physical plane, right? So when you focus on hara, you focus really on your line of light within your body. And that there's nothing more centering than that, So like just taking a few moments in your day and just being still with yourself and just imagining that line of light and bringing all your focus and all your attention into that line of light. When you're in that line of light, nothing else is there. It's just you and your light. And that's your landing point.
Yeah. Thank you. That's really helpful, because I was going to ask, I'm sure people are like, I'm interested. What do I do? So that's really helpful. Like, that's really helpful. And I know another thing that you're a component of, that you speak about, is living in, and I'm obsessed with this, living in effortless ease. Which I need to take a breath, because I have some charge around that.
Yeah.
And I'm working through it.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you talk to us about that? Like, what that looks like? How do you get there? I mean, of course, I'm sure that's not a one-time conversation, but like, can you talk about dismantling the pain and the this and the that, but like how you have cultivated effortless ease in your life and how you do that for others?
Yes. And it's a work in progress always, right?
Yeah.
So living in effortless ease, the very first things that come to my mind is trust, unconditional love of self and other, belief in yourself, embodying God, right? Just by knowing that you are source and really living from that place and practicing that, all this stuff that, that we speak about here. It's like, we all know these things. We're just here to remind each other of these things, which we all need, because it's like such a physical world we've been programmed into. So we all need those reminders. And so it's always a work in progress to always practice. Like, it's one thing I teach. Everything's a practice. Nothing's ever perfect. So don't ever think that you did something right or wrong. So long as you're a conscious, awakened person, and you're doing it, then you're doing it right and you're doing it well, and just keep going, Yeah. For me, it has a lot to do with trust. I trust and I know that I am supported. I trust and I know. And one of the reasons I trust and know that I'm supported is because I know I'm the source of everything in my life. And I know I have all sorts of soul contracts and agreements on all different soul levels to have certain experiences. I know and I trust that all that's happening in my world that I'm experiencing is not happening to me, but it's happening for me. And on even higher levels, source is happening as me, through me. And when you get to that point where you start to practice and lean into that knowing that all is happening through you, and it's all happening for you, for your highest and greatest good, as per your contracts, as per your agreements, as per all of those beautiful components that you put together that are embodied in your DNA and built out in your template to attract through your magnetofield all that you have come to experience. You start to then realize, okay, this is happening for me. What do I do with it? What am I learning by it? What is this teaching me? What is this showing me? How can I be better because of it? You discern everything that happens in your reality. And when you get to a point and you start working with that and you start really understand, okay, you get that understanding, and then the belief, then you can have the trust. And once you have that trust, life starts to just flow. And you know that even the most difficult things that come your way are all going to align. They're all aligned for you. It's just, are you allowing it to align? Because we're that powerful. We are so powerful that what we think, what we feel, it moves worlds. So qualifying, that's a big part of it, is qualifying what you're thinking and what you're feeling at any given moment. And that's a true adjustment, and that's a practice. And over time, like anything else, if you practice it enough, it becomes a habit. And then from a habit, it becomes a skill. So it just starts with the desire to create the shift and the change. And that's one thing that I love to witness in those that I work with intimately, is that transition point. You know, they come in and they're like, oh, and when they come out the other side of the program, they're like, you know, there's just this sense like, wow, you got the foundation and the tools, and you got the practice, and you start to feel a sense of ownership over everything in your life. You're never a victim, right? You're a full owner. And from that ownership comes sovereignty. You have sovereignty, ownership over your sphere of influence that you hold within yourself. That's where effortless ease comes from. It comes from that starting point and leaning into that.
Yeah, that is so helpful. And it's so funny because you kind of answered the question I was going to ask next within it. Is I see a lot of people, and to be completely transparent, myself too, that has moments of really clear consciousness, awareness. And then I'm going to be honest, like sometimes I'm tempted to go back to bed. You know, like it's the going back to bed can sometimes be really seductive, alluring, like, ooh, I'm just going to take a little nap. And so how have you, and it sounds like desire, choice, mindset, but like how have you stayed, and we ebb and flow, so it's not from a place of perfection, but like how have you stayed committed to consciousness? How have you stayed committed? Again, we wobble sometimes, but overall committed to consciousness, mindset, showing up as your best self. All of, like, how have you, I know we will wobble sometimes, but how have you been like, okay, I'm coming back and I'm coming back and I'm coming back? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. I love that question because it brings me to this uncharted place I feel within myself, that question. For me, I was so out of balance and so out of alignment with myself for most of my life, you know, making choices that I thought were the best choices I could make. But now in the expanded state of consciousness that I am looking back, as we all do, as we go through our lives, you know, we look back and we say, well, how did I make that choice? You know, and the first and foremost thing is to forgive yourself in that you did the best you could at that time with what you had to work with, always, right? But my point is that I was way out of alignment for so long. And when I had that reincarnation in the same body experience, that put me on a platform of a totally different level within myself. And when that happened, like what I said before about relax, I was a poster child of like, I gotta learn this, I gotta learn that, I gotta learn this, I gotta do that. I just want to learn everything and just like integrate everything. And, and like literally my guides are coming in, whoa, you need to chill. You got plenty of time for, no, but I missed so many years. And so what this brings me to is that my driving force, it comes from like my oversoul. It comes from, I wanted to know. I wanted to be all that I knew I couldn't be. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And for me, my personal experience, when I go back to my earliest memories of popping myself out of my body, or at night astral traveling down to my school, elementary school, and practicing flying in the fields at night. I have that, I just always had that connection. I lost it for so long. And so it's a matter of finding what that connection is for you. What's your connection? What's your grounded place? What's your passion? What's your purpose? Because your passion is always your purpose. Combined with the lessons that you've learned culminates your purpose, right? You take your passion, you take the lessons, the greatest challenges that you learned and grew through, you take the gifts out of those, you integrate them into your passion, and that's your purpose. And for me personally, that's my purpose. My purpose is to teach and to show and to live as, if you want to call it the new human or the golden age of humanity, So even when things got really rough, when things got really difficult, I might have fallen out of my center for a little bit, but I could bring myself right back. Whereas it used to be, when I went out of my center, I could be out of my center for weeks,
Yes.
But now it's like, all right, like if I go out of my center now, I'd have to say like now who I am now, like I go out of my center, I'm out of my center for maybe 5 seconds and then I go right back in. I've gotten, but like even last year, I wasn't that good. Last year I go out of my center. Maybe I was out of the center for like a few minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes. I might be out in a worst case scenario, maybe a year or so ago, maybe 15 minutes. We go back maybe 3 years ago out of my center. I might have been out of my center for like an hour. Right. So it's just that practice. You just keep practicing. That's why being centered, knowing your center, identifying your center, feeling your center, practicing your center, awareness around what's triggering you to get out of your center. Like I teach a whole shadow release process that helps you to deal with the triggers. And when you deal with the triggers on this kind of as a lifestyle, you start getting very attuned to where your center is, because then you become really aware when you're out of center because you're triggered, right? And that's the whole point of centering.
Yes.
To help you to be aware of what that feels like so you could be aware of when you don't feel it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I want to voice this really briefly before I pass the mic about where we can find you and last thoughts. I don't know why this is coming up, but I'm having, because I know some people will definitely jam to this conversation, and I know some people will be attracted, but also scared. And so I just wanted to voice, I had this like weird thought, so random, but it's funny because so many people are attracted to spirituality, like some people that are like, oh, well, I'm not attracted to that, but then somehow magically go into a crystal shop or with tarot or whatever. And I laugh because we're a culture that loves, not everyone, of course, but like loves a good Harry Potter. You know what I mean? And we talk about magic, 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 magic. But what we're really doing here is magic. And I can feel already people's resistances. And I think that's societal stories, conditioning. And correct me if I'm wrong. Could that also be like a soul contract thing of like being resistant to like, does that make sense? Like I'm feeling the invitation. You do such a great job of like inviting us back to center and deeper into this work. And I feel, and this could be, I could feel like pre-people's, but this also could be mine, of like the fear, the contraction around it. Like, what is that about? Like, what's the fear? What's the resistance? I know there's conditioning and stories, but like, is there other things deeper with the resistance to this work?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. That's, like they're all cheering. They're like, yay, great question. Yeah. So resistance, when we have resistance, what that really is, it's the ego coming in and saying, don't change, right? Because the ego, that's what the ego wants to do. It wants to protect what is. And anything that threatens what is, i.e., change, is something it doesn't want. One thing that I have definitely come to know is that when we are experiencing resistance, that is protecting us from one of our greatest gift opportunities, because that's going to create change. And it's always a leveling up change. It's always a leveling up change. But in the resistance itself is an opportunity for you to know yourself better, for you to inquire, qualify, and discern. Because that's really what we're all here for at the end of the day, is to know ourselves better, right? In our physical forms, to discover more about ourselves, right? So when you go into the resistance, you ask, well, what is it? It's always some fear, right? It's always some fear. But most of the time we don't even, we just see it as resistance and we either push away from it or just put it to the side or try to forget about it. But if you instead get curious, well, what is that? What is it that's trying to protect me from? What am I really fearful of? What am I projecting that I don't like? Because it's all about projection, right? Projecting into the future. Well, if I do this, then this maybe, or maybe my family won't like it, or maybe this, or maybe then I'd have to leave my job and my security, or maybe, right? So just doing the inner work and getting curious and asking yourself all those questions. But I assure you, the bigger picture of it is always when you work through your resistance and you push through, you always are grateful that you did it. Always, hands down. You're always grateful you did it. You always wind up becoming better in one way or another, or more equipped or stronger, or, just more resource available to you when you work through your resistances. Because resistance is fear. Fear is not meant to be faced. Fear is meant to be worked through. Because when you work through fear, that intensity of that energy of fear, it transmutes into light resource for you to utilize for your creations, for your life, for anything that you want to grow or experience. So it's, fear is just like the unknown. You just want to transmute it. Just transmute it by working through it. I know it's easier said than done, but get curious. Make that your first step.
Oh, that's so good. It's so good. I want to transition for where people could find you, all that good stuff. But before we do, I want to pass the mic. Maybe it's nothing, but I want to pass the mic one final time. Is there anything else that you feel like, Erica, I have to say this, I have to wrap it with this? Like, is there any final wisdom, insight that you want to share with us today before we wrap?
Yeah, thanks so much. And thank you so much for the opportunity. Such a wonderful, amazing experience to be here and to share in this space with you and with everybody listening and everybody here. Just, so much love to everyone, truly. Just, your source. You're a source. You are the source of everything in your life. You have all the answers right inside of you. Just tap in, get curious about you, spend time with you. Even if you have to make it a routine, which you should make it a routine thing. First 10 minutes of the day are you with you. How do you feel? What do you want today? What feels good to you? What would you like to experience today? Talk to yourself, talk to your body, talk to your organs, talk to you. Everything has consciousness. Your cells are always responding to you. Be loving self-talk, nurture yourself, pay attention to you, be aware of what you're putting through your body and out into the world. The blessings and the benefits will trump anything else that you could possibly invest that energy in. So yeah, just you are the source. You're the source of everything. You are God incarnate. I know it sounds like, wow, to some people they're like, no, but truly, right? Because the source of all creation, you are a product of that, just like everything else, right? You're the God that's creating. You are the creation of God that is creating, right? If you look at nature, you got trees, sun, moon, stars, hills, mountains. That's all God's creation. And you're part of that. But look what you create. Look what we as a human race have created. You can't help but create. I hear people say to me, oh, I'm not creative. I don't do art. It's like, dude, you're creating everything. Look at your life.
Yeah.
You're creating every moment of your life. And what are you creating that on? You're creating them based on what you're thinking. More importantly, you're creating it based on the judgments of what you're thinking, which creates your emotions, which drives your actions. So embrace the creator God that you are, you know, start tuning in. You've got so much power inside of you. You don't even know. I don't even know. Even know. Nobody knows. It's that infinite and powerful. Just start playing with it.
Oh, that's so good. Seriously, I can't thank you enough. I'm like, oh, I can't wait. I want to work with you. You are just, I'm like, wait, hold on. Personally, I need to hop onto your website. So can you tell people where they can find you, how they could be in your circle, how they could work with you? Can you just kind of share with us where they can find you and how they can be with you and on the interwebs?
Yeah, lovely, lovely. Yeah, so I am Lady from Source on Instagram and TikTok. My website is You Are Source. So that's all spelled out, youaresource.co. That's it. Co is in co-creation, not com. Okay. And you can email me at ladyfromsource, all spelled out, at youaresource.co. And I would be, it would be a great pleasure to offer any of your viewership. I do soul contract readings. So I typically don't offer this as a one-off. You won't find this product anywhere on my website or anything like that, but you can email me or reach out to me through any of the channels and say that, you heard me on We Are at the Light, and ask for the soul contract reading. It's typically $195, but I'll offer it at $150 for any of your viewership.
Yes, thank you. I'm like, that might be my birthday treat to myself because my birthday is coming up. So I'm like, okay, great. I will also be doing that.
Yeah. It's a phenomenal gift, the soul contract. What it does is we take the phonetics of the ancient Hebrew alphabet and we break down your name phonetically into frequency. And within that reading of those frequencies, it literally lays out the blueprint of your life, why you're here, what you came to learn, what your greatest challenges are, and what it is that you came to provide to yourself and to the world, right? So it shows all your karma. You'll understand why everything has happened the way it's happened, why the relationships have happened the way they are. It's a great, wonderful step to tuning into the frequency of you and getting to the core of why you came here, what you came to do, and what your challenges are along the way, and how to work through those challenges. So it's very powerful. Yeah, it's fully recorded. It's up to 90 minutes. You get the audio and the video of it, and it's really meant as like an ascension tool. You can keep going back to it, and you'll have another aha moment, and then you'll be like, wow, and you'll integrate that understanding of yourself and what you're here for, and you could just keep going back to it with a higher level of consciousness, getting more and more uploads and downloads from it. So
wow, great. I know I personally will be taking you up on that, and I hope lots of our listeners who feel like, ooh, I need that, will take you up on that. I seriously can't thank you enough for coming. This was awesome. This was so helpful, so beautiful, and I can't wait to hopefully create more magic and collaborate with you in the future. So seriously, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Erica. Thank you so much. So much love to you.
Thank you. Seriously, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode and on this podcast journey. And if you loved what we talked about today and you know another human who could definitely benefit from what was discussed, I would so appreciate if you would go ahead and share this podcast with them. Don't forget, hit subscribe or follow so you never ever miss an episode. And the great news is you can always follow me, my work, my blog, my podcast on my website at www.wethelight.org. And hey, remember, life is so much brighter when we shine. I'll see you next time.